a playlist original.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Back to the Blockbuster with your hosts, Gaius and Jackson. And we are two excited kids at a candy store because it's finally spooky season. Yeah. The kickoff to our spooky season officially, on the podcast.
Officially. We've had a couple horror entries recently, but that was not our start. Now is our start. And I'm just like you said, just as excited as ever to finally get here. It's our favorite time of the year.
Yeah, the next 2 months is going to be all horror all the time. There will be some news and stuff that we can maybe fit in if it happens, but news has been very slow because of the strike, unless they're talking about delaying some of our most anticipated movies of the year, or are giving us more news about how the strike is not ending anytime soon. So until then, we pivot and we talk horror. And the good thing about doing this is, one, when Jackson got on the show, like a little over 8 months ago now, right. I had no idea that he was a horror movie guy. The other guy who's on our spinoff, Owen, who started the podcast with me, he likes horror movies, but he's not a horror movie guy. It's not like he doesn't really.
There is a distinction.
Watch a lot of them.
Right.
A distinction, yeah. And so when Back to the Blockbuster first started, the original idea, I was gonna make it a horror movie podcast in the beginning because I was like, I want to do that. But but the other people,
I didn't know
the other people on. Yeah, the other people that were on, they were like, they are not horror movie people, and I didn't think that would be fair. So like only have horror movies all the time on the podcast. So the good thing about Jackson joining is that he loves horror movies, and he was super stoked about what these next 2 months could bring. So that's going to be pretty awesome to get into. And the other good part about it is when we talked about doing this, we were like, okay, we want to talk about horror movies, but we also want to use it as an opportunity to talk to other horror movie fans or other horror movie related podcasts
to collab. That's right.
To collab. So we're doing that for the first time today with the guys from the Return, Revenge, Resurrection podcast, Alex and Dean.
We wrestled the demon Pazuzu in The Exorcist.
Your mother is in here, Karis. Would you like to leave a message? I'll see that she gets it.
We hooked the fisherman killer Ben Willis, and I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Oh, you got a letter? I got run over, Helen gets her hair chopped off, Julie gets a body in her trunk, and you get a letter. That's balanced.
We survived a summer away with the angel of death, Angela Baker, in sleepaway camp.
Look what I did. I packed you and your cousin some goodies for the ride up to camp. Wasn't that nice of me?
But we ain't seen nothing yet. Join Alex and Dean of the Return, Revenge, Resurrection podcast as we go toe-to-toe with the ever-resourceful Michael Myers.
I shot him 6 times.
Be there as we discuss the Halloween franchise in its entirety, from John Carpenter's beloved 1978 classic to David Gordon Green's epic forthcoming finale.
I shot him in the heart.
We cover it all, the good, the bad, and the bloody. Return, Revenge, Resurrection, a podcast that slashes its way through horror movie franchises.
You don't know what death is.
New episodes every Thursday, available wherever podcasts are found.
I told everyone!
Welcome to Back to the Blockbuster and Spooky Season.
I love that name, by the way, guys. That's a killer podcast name. Yeah, who came up with that? Was that a joint?
It's all Alex.
That was that's like the one thing I could say I brought to the show. Otherwise, everything else is Dean. Yeah,
right.
Nice.
I like to think I come up with good ideas, but then I just throw like hundreds of ideas at Alex, and he's like, "Okay, no, I don't think so. And then the first one he throws back at me, it's like, "Oh yeah, that's it. That's the show's name. You did it. You got it."
Yeah, so the cool, like, what's funny is that I saw their Instagram pop up like a while ago, and the first thing I saw was like the cover art that you guys were having for your podcast, and that was the thing that stood out to me the most. And I remember sending a message like a long time ago in the beginning. I was like, "Hey, it sounds like a cool concept. Whatever you guys want, if you guys would like to collab ever, like I would love to do that." And you guys were honest, like in the beginning, you're like, "Hey, we kind of want to get it off the ground ourselves, and we're not going to have guests yet, but like in the future, let's try to do that." And when this came up, you guys were actually the first of the horror movie podcasts that I reached out to, because I was like, all right, this seems like the perfect time to do it. And your podcast is a lot of fun, really, really fun to listen to. You guys are both very great together on it. And why don't you tell some of the listeners exactly what the podcast is and what it's all about?
Yeah, sure. It's It's a horror movie podcast, and we walk through franchises. We both big fans of horror franchises, the good and the bad. We still love to talk about the bad. So we just go sort of like each episode is a movie in the franchise, and we talk about just that movie, and then the next episode move on to the next movie, and in the end we do a big like epilogue episode, we call it, where we just look back on the entire franchise, how it started, the ebbs and flows, how it sort of went through, the ups and downs, and what we liked about it, our favorite characters, things like that. It was it's basically just me and Alex. We don't have any big structure to the episodes. We're just kind of talking about the movies because we love them. So we watch those movies, get on, and just hash it out.
That's kind of like the same dynamic we have over here at Back to the Blockbuster too. Which honestly, if you love movies, you really can talk for hours about them. So if even without a script, it works.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it really does. So how was this like the only concept that you guys kind of had, or you kind of knew what you guys wanted to do in the beginning, or did things kind of change or along the way?
Well, I mean, this show I think has been pretty specifically what it is from the beginning. It was always going to be about franchises, but we've actually done a couple shows together in the past too. We started doing it was called Nothing But Comics. It was a comic book podcast. We did that years ago together. Then we did another show called First Last. Then we did another show called Through the Ages, another comic related one. So we've done a couple shows together, and it just I'm at like my most natural with Dean. Like for some reason, when we get on the mics together, it works.
Yeah,
at least I like to think so. Yeah,
yes, I think so too, Alex. This is our 5th podcast, and none of the ideas really stuck. I guess we enjoy all of them. We think all of the other podcasts we have are great work out there, but nothing it really stuck with us. We ended up kind of dropping them or losing interest or whatever it was. And I actually have not been a horror fan my entire life. I was terrified of horror movies when I was younger.
That's
even
the best, though.
Exactly.
I miss that here.
Yeah.
Even into my 20s, like I'm 37 now, even all through my 20s, could not watch a horror movie. Just couldn't sit down and do it. I'd get terrified. And then a few years ago, I don't know what happened. The switch turned off. Whatever the fear was is gone. And now it's just my favorite genre. Like I absolutely love horror movies. Can't get enough of them. Watch them all the time. So as soon as that happened, I knew Alex was a big horror fan, like his entire life. And that was just something that we never had as part of our podcast because we never really connected on it. So as soon as I became a big fan, I was like, Alex, it's horror. That's the thing. That's the thing we're going to stick with. That's what's going to make our podcast just natural. And we love this. This is, I would say this is our favorite show we've done. Absolutely. And we absolutely love this one.
Sweet. That prompts a question, actually, Dean. I'm just curious now because you say that you were scared of horror movies for most of your life, and then the flip switch. And I found I had a similar experience. Like I always went out and sought out horror movies growing up, even when I was afraid. I can't pinpoint it, but definitely over the course of, you see enough, the flip switches off. I found it's very hard to get scared these days. So my question is there anything still to this day that just any movie that you find hard to watch to get through that's just so scary? And Alex, I'll ask you the same after too.
Yeah,
we have the same movie. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay.
What is it? I'm
cool.
dying to know.
So I had 3 on my list. I had 3 movies on my list that I thought I could not revisit because they were going to be too much for me. And through the podcast, we've revisited 2 of those, and I figured out that they're fine. I'm okay with them. So that's The Sixth Sense. I thought I could never go back to The Sixth Sense. I did watch that as a teenager, and that killed me.
There's a scene in there with the little ghost girl puking. That
for sure.
Yeah. Scary as hell.
Sure. So I thought I couldn't get back to that one, but I was able, when I went back and watched it, it was fine. The next one, The Conjuring, thought I couldn't do that again.
You and Jackson.
Yeah, I love that movie. That's awesome. Still frightens me too, though.
Yeah, it's definitely very frightening. Hide and clap can fuck right off. I'm done with that. I don't want that game. That game can get out of here.
I missed that moment in the theaters so much. That was awesome.
Yeah. But the one that I haven't revisited, the one I would say that still I'm afraid to press play on and haven't done it yet. I haven't done it yet, is Hereditary. Can't do it. Can't press play yet.
That one fucked me up. Like I've been watching horror movies my entire life. I grew up with it. I'm watching stuff I shouldn't have been watching, but I would watch with my parents because like if you couldn't keep up well, you're out of the family, that sort of thing. That's what we watched.
Yeah.
So it was a long time that I went where no movie would ever scare me. And then I watched Hereditary, and that stuck with me for just like weeks. I dreaded, man. Yeah, I dreaded nighttime. I hated going to bed. I was like 28 years old, and I'm like, I don't want to go to bed because I'm so scared of this movie. Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah, some of the most traumatized I've ever been in the theater, and I love it. I love that adrenaline rush of being scared by a movie. It's something that no other genre really can emulate. And yeah, Hereditary is one of the last ones to really do. I'd say Skinamarink came close, not quite, but that got under my skin too. Watching that earlier this year. Yeah, definitely.
The Skinamarink thing is funny because like Jackson and I have like died on that hill that like that movie scared us. It worked for what it was, and then there are other people in our little like community that were like, "No, that movie is trash, guys."
We hate that movie. It's love hate, very
it's
much.
A love hate thing. Yes. But Jackson and I had died on the hill that it was good for what it was, and it got to me. I mean, I watched it alone in the dark, and that's all. I mean, it was unsettling to me for how short it was and straight to the point. I mean, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. Also too with horror movies, I grew up like Alex watching them at a very young age, probably way too young.
Agreed.
I remember I saw Hellraiser that was like 7 or 8. I was way too young to watch something like that.
Wow.
Yeah,
great movie.
And my mom always had that feeling of like, okay, he shouldn't be watching these, but he might just find them on his own. So maybe it's just best if like I'm around and he's watching them, like trying to make like justify like it being okay,
right?
And then I have a younger brother who's 25, and he used to be deathly afraid of horror movies when he was younger. Like if he came in my room and I was watching one and there was like any distinctly like horrific scene on, he would just run out of the room and slam the door. But now it's funny because like we go see almost every horror movie that comes out together. He's completely changed the older that he's gotten. Right. But I didn't think he would ever get to that point because there's like legit fear from like some of the smallest scenes in movies. Like he just couldn't watch them. But I love how that kind of changes for people. Either you're kind of too afraid of them when you're younger and then you get over it, or you become people like Jackson, where it's like harder to scare you the older you get. It's like, oh, this is kind of old hat. Like I need something new. But at the end of the day, horror movies are just fun in general, even if they don't always frighten or terrify you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So lots to be had.
Yeah, some of my favorite horror movies, like to me, the best horror movie of all time is Halloween. I love Halloween. Okay. I can't say it scares me. I can't say it scares me. But I love watching it.
Yes.
So it doesn't necessarily have to scare me for me to enjoy it. But one of my favorite parts about doing this podcast has actually been because Dean is so new to the genre. It's sort of like watching his growth as a horror movie fan. Because there's movies that I just grew up watching. I've seen them many times, and he's never seen them before. And then I get that other person to talk to. I could talk to my family about horror movies all day, but it's stuff that we've seen a million times. But Dean, it's his first time watching it, or maybe a second time. Right. So there's still that like excitement there from him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get on mic and I'm like, Alex, holy shit, have you seen Candyman? That movie's awesome. He's like, yeah, classic. It's a classic.
Yeah.
he's like grew up on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I mean, I love getting people to discover new horror movies, even if they're not. It's actually more fun to get people who say they're not fans of stuff like that to see if they'll like it. And that's how they really work sometimes, if they can like convert the uninitiated. Like, all right, I'm picking up what you're putting down. That was pretty good. I think like my buddy Owen's like that in a certain way. Like there's certain horror movies that he likes, but he likes to be introduced to new ones. Like on our spinoff, we did a deep dive on It Follows. He had never seen it.
Yeah.
And actually didn't really know anything about it. Like he went in kind of blind, never saw a trailer for it or anything like that before.
Cool.
The way to go.
Covered it.
Yeah.
And he was like, I wish I would have saw this, when it came out after he watched it. So it's also making someone like him more open to being like, I should be more a little bit more like accepting of certain movies like this and like give them a shot without, prejudging them. Because I think we can agree that this genre gets prejudged a lot by a lot of people who think it's like the bottom of the barrel of the film industry, even though the last few years they have proved to be some of the most successful movies theatrically, because they're not expensive to make and they have a really solid built-in audience that rushes out to see them, especially if there's buzz about a really good one.
Right. We support the people who are in it are true supporters of the genre, and we turn out for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
for
horror
sure.
Horror fans like see everything. You know, like horror fans want to go see every horror movie. They want to have seen every single horror movie. That's what I started to feel once I started to watch them. I was like, oh, I need to watch everything. I need to see everything. So I have like all this context, and I know what movie is like taking aspects from another movie. I need to see everything.
Best part. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a tall order trying to get everything in.
Yeah,
Yes.
and you want that feeling again. You want that like that new feeling again of being scared. What's the thing that's going to get me? You know, I like to just throw myself entirely into the movie. I like to get scared, you know, while I'm watching it by the movie. The thing that's changed now is when the movie's over, I'm done. You know, I'm not scared anymore, and that's good. But I love to throw myself into it, and I love to get it. It's almost like it can be like a therapeutic thing to get so stressed out watching a movie, and then kind of end it, and you're like, it's good. Yeah, I'm okay now. I got all the stress out, and now I feel like I'm calm. So that's what's really drawn me to horror. And just like it is my go-to now. Now when I sit down to watch a movie, it's like, what horror haven't I seen? That's going to be the first thing I look at. And then if I don't find anything, then I'll move on to something else.
Is there a particular genre or subgenre, I guess, of horror that either of you guys are like particular to, that you find yourself going to more than others, or are you guys open-ended?
So I mean, I'll watch anything, but my two big ones are the slasher and like Supernatural. I love both of those.
Supernatural is the stuff that's more prone to scare me, which is why I find I'm going towards them more, because it's harder and harder these days. But yeah, both of those are fantastic. What about you, Dean?
Yeah, I would say the slasher definitely up there, can just be so fun. A lot of those older slasher movies, all these franchises are just a good time. I can put that on and just, you know, have a good time for an hour and a half. They're usually short too, which is nice. Yeah. You can maybe even fit in a couple if you have 3 hours. And then on the other side, I really like sort of, I guess they call it modern horror now. You know, I just really like these horror movies, A24 movies coming out that
glad you said it.
Just really make you think. You know, you get to watch that movie and get to be like, this actually applies to my life in a different way. You know, I can apply. I'm not exactly in that movie. That's not happening to me, but I see how that relates to me. Especially like a lot of grief stuff they go through in those movies. It's just like I really connect with all the A24s and all the modern horror stuff. So
glad you brought it up.
Yeah, movies like It Follows, like absolutely love that movie. Fantastic. 5 out of 5. Love it. So yeah, those are kind of my two favorites.
Right on.
I'm glad you said that about the A24 stuff, because like when you watch something like Hereditary, like the bulk of that movie is like, all right, this is really just about how this family is dealing with grief and
it's a family drama.
Family drama. It's
with
a horror
sprinkled on it.
Yeah, and it's just like that added layer. Like you said, it really makes you think. I love when there's more like subtext there than what's actually going on, because there's a lot. You can really a lot of different layers to certain horror movies, and I like that there's more than what's on the surface than it appears to be.
Exactly. We're spending more time with the characters. These are really character pieces. Like if you look at, say, like Saint Maud, if you guys have seen that one, it's a horror movie, kind of. But it's beautiful. The journey that you're on with this character, it's so insane.
Oh, and I also want to piggyback again on what you said earlier, that horror fans will support like almost any horror movie. One of my buddies he's never understood this. He still doesn't. He was like, what I will never get about horror movie fans is that I know that some of said movie is gonna be bad, but then you're still there on opening night, ready to go to like take it all in. And I was like, because sometimes the bad ones are fun in their own way.
Yeah, for sure.
And like, I mean, I'm not saying that this one is particularly like bad, but we just did like an anniversary episode for Freddy versus Jason. That's not high art by any means, but still fun.
It's a bad movie, but I love.
Yeah. I feel like horror is more likely to like transcend like the typical dynamics of what we consider good or bad in terms of like movies as an art form. Whereas like, even though fundamentally they might not have great movie making aspects in them, they still are able to do something that we would consider good, that, makes us revisit a movie 20 years later, like Freddy vs. Jason, I had a fucking blast watching that movie. I hadn't seen it since my adolescence. And while, it's no Shawshank or anything, it's still, I would say it's a great horror movie. It does its job, even though, I didn't find it scary, but
you have a good time
iconic.
with it. Right. You have a good time
exactly.
with it. The worst kind of horror movie for me, or honestly, any movie, is a boring movie. You can have a bad movie that I can have fun with, but if you're boring, I want no part of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's what's so fun going through franchises, why we really enjoy our podcast, because you can go through something like Halloween and have such a great first movie and then get to, number 6 where, it's just that nobody likes it. It's awful. And we'll have a good time with that. We can have a good time with a movie like that. So it's really just if it's boring. If that movie is boring, then we're going to go in there and we're going to have a tough time coming up with fun things to say. But anything else, really anything else, we have, it could just be fun to talk about.
Yep. I'd agree. Boring would probably be the worst insult to throw at a horror movie, at least, for sure. Yeah, you don't want your horror movie to be boring. That being said, do either of you guys have, and I'm sure you do, but maybe even several, but is there a clear, definitive series that either of you guys would classify as your favorite, like in horror?
So we actually rank the franchises as we go. So we'll rank the individual... we'll rank the individual movies and in our epilogue episodes, and then at the end we'll take the franchise as a whole and rank it against the rest of the franchise.
That's a great idea.
Thank you. So right now we actually have Halloween as our number 1 franchise.
Nice.
The Halloween franchise. It up until now it's been it'll still be, because right now we're doing the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. We try and do one big franchise a year. Last year was our Halloween one, so that one's just so big. There was so much to talk about. We had so much fun doing it, and the movies are great, right? Yeah. And there's a lot of great movies in it, so it makes sense that would be on the top.
Yeah, there's a lot of aspects that go into us ranking it. A lot of things we take into account. How good the movies are is definitely one thing.
What we had for lunch that day, what we had, the placement of the sun in the sky.
How chaotic the franchise is even sometimes a bonus for us. So like Halloween having multiple timelines that we can talk about, that's like kind of a bonus for us.
A choose your own adventure kind of thing.
Yeah,
exactly.
Having 3 movies in one franchise with the same name.
Something I love. I love the naming of movies. I love that Halloween 2018 is a direct sequel to Halloween, like the original. So you have a movie and then a second movie, and it's Halloween and Halloween. I just love that. It's something that comes into play when we rank. So we are. I would have said going into this, creating this podcast, I would have said that Nightmare on Elm Street was my favorite franchise. When we covered Halloween last year, that took over. That took over for me. And it's like just sitting down and talking about every single movie. It's hard to not just then fall in love with that franchise.
You ride that high too, probably.
You ride the high, yeah. So now we're working our way through Nightmare. We sort of just started. So we're working our way through Nightmare. And I can see it. I can see it overtaking. So, we're going to have to see once we get to the end. Now that I'm talking about every one of those movies, and I knew I loved this franchise going into it, they're very different. Halloween and Nightmare are very different. So we'll see in the end when we get to that epilogue episode what it is for me, which one it is that I can say is my favorite one.
That first is one of my all-time favorites, without a doubt.
So good.
Yeah, for sure.
Fuck, man.
As a huge Halloween fan, I used to always feel bad about doing this, but I used to rank the Nightmare franchise above a lot of the bigger ones, because I think there's just a lot more going on there than just it being like a standard horror film, slasher film.
Sure.
Even the ones that are, I guess you can say quote unquote not good, there's still a lot more going on. In a lot of those. I actually listened to your the Freddy's Revenge episode, because I to go back and kind of re-evaluate and rediscover those movies again has to be a lot of fun, especially if you haven't seen in a while. I brought up A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 briefly when we were talking about Freddy versus Jason, trying to explain to Jackson what that movie is, and kind of there's a lot of subtext in that movie too. Some say it was like, no, it wasn't on purpose, and other people were like, no, it was on purpose. But a fun one to look back on now, because people's views on that movie have changed a lot. Where I think the reactions to it are a lot more positive than back in the day. And that's the cool thing about going back to watching these movies again, especially with someone that doesn't really watch them all the time. It's like, hey, the fresh set of eyes. Like, what can I discover that's new, something I didn't really know before. So that's what I think is cool about your guys' podcast, is getting to be reintroduced to all these franchises and see them in a totally different light, possibly.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. I know when a movie is doing its job really well, because when my wife, who watches all the movies with me too,
Nice.
when her gaze is like focused on the floor and she's not like, because she can't bring herself to watch the TV. I'm like, okay, all right, this movie has something.
You're like, she's afraid, so this is good.
Yep.
That's when you know it works.
Yeah.
As far, I mean, I'm sure you guys don't want to give away any potential ideas, but are there any franchises that you haven't done yet that you really kind of want to explore more than others in the future?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think we both probably have lists.
We've got lists. I actually made the bucket list of franchises just like last weekend for no reason. I just threw it out there just in case. But yeah, we've got our list. So sort of like an obscure one that I would want to throw out there. Like we obviously want to hit all the big ones, all the popular ones, because we love those movies too. So those are definitely on our list to come. But I would say one that's just like maybe not so popular, and is maybe more movies than everyone thinks it is, would be Tremors, which is 7 movies long.
That's true.
Tremors movies.
I knew there was a few, but whoa.
Yeah, there are a lot. I forgot about that.
So that would be one of mine. That's one of my bucket list franchises. I absolutely love the first movie. That is actually one of the, I guess, horror movies. It's kind of a soft horror movie, but that's definitely one of the horror movies that I did watch as a kid by just knowing the spots I needed to fast forward through, knowing the spots that would scare me. So I'd watch the whole thing, but be like, oh no, this time I got to fast forward 5 minutes. And so that one is just like near and dear to my heart. And then just knowing that there's like, I don't know, 6 other direct to video movies, that's exciting for me. That's an exciting prospect. So I really want to tackle that one day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Alex.
No, I was just say, I would really like to cover the Howling franchise. I love the first movie, and sometimes when we're going through a franchise, the first movie will be really good. The second one tries to be a copycat, but with the Howling franchise, you get to the second movie and already things are off the wall. Like, things are fucking crazy by the time you get to the second one.
The second one has a crazy name, doesn't it? Have like the word bitch in the title or something? What's it called?
Yeah.
It's called something
I
I know this because I watched The Howling for the first time last year, but I made the mistake of watching it right after one of my favorites, An American Werewolf in London, and so I feel like that really skewed my enjoyment of that video, because I like American Werewolf in London better, but I'm due for a rewatch of The Howling for sure. That's a great. I didn't really know how many were in that series, truthfully.
There's a bunch.
Didn't know either.
There's a bunch. I do know.
Bothering me now.
Eventually, well, okay. So Your Sister is a Werewolf is the second one in that, but by the third one, it's the Howling 3, the marsupials. So at that point, they're not even werewolves. They're more like kangaroos. Right?
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it's insane. Absolutely crazy.
Great.
Oh man, those are the kind of franchises that'd be fun to revisit. Like some of the quote unquote bad ones I would like to rewatch possibly again are like Critters.
Yeah.
Or Puppet Master would be another fun one to like. Yeah, because there's a lot of those too. Yeah. I mean, even Leprechaun, I guess. And you probably
that's for sure.
Jennifer Aniston, eh?
That's sort of an ongoing joke on our podcast, an ongoing joke to bring up that we're going to cover Leprechaun soon. So it's definitely going to happen. That's definitely one that's going to happen. It sort of reoccurs that it's like, oh, Leprechaun, we got to hit that pretty soon. Seems like a fun one.
He got to go to the hood and space, which is amazing. So, like a lot of horror movie icons cannot say the same. But yeah, like that's what we're saying. Like, the ones, there's horror movies that are definitely made to be good and thought provoking and a lot more than what they are. And then there's stuff like that, where it's, all right, I'm just gonna have a good time. It was made to be kind of bad. Like, it's so bad that it's good, and I can respect that.
Yes.
Yeah,
totally respect that.
Yeah, just FYI, I just want to bring it up again. Howling 2 is called Howling 2 Sturba Werewolf Bitch. That is literally the title. I wasn't going to forget that. That is hilarious.
Jesus.
But yeah.
Oh God, they had a good time with that. That's hilarious.
No kidding.
I didn't even know they had that many sequels in that at all.
I had no
yeah,
idea.
there's let's see, I think 8 movies in that.
What?
What?
Yeah. And
oh
actually,
my God. That's a hike.
I believe. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, Christopher Lee was in the second one, was in the sequel. And,
okay, let's go.
Yeah, but the movie was so bad that he actually called up. It was Joe Dante who directed the first one. He called up Joe Dante and apologized for being in it.
Yeah.
Sounds like something we got to do.
Yeah, so of course we have to cover it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I dedicated my time to this project. Like you said,
Yeah.
I bet a lot of people would have seen that just for Christopher Lee because that guy was a legend at the time. So
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Horror legend.
Cool.
Yeah.
So before we get to the actual movie we're going to talk about, I got to ask you guys, since we do have a few horror movie releases left in the year, is there anything that you're looking forward to? Anything you're worried about?
That's a great question.
Well, I'm really excited to watch the newest Exorcist movie, and I say that because that was the first franchise we ever covered for our show.
Nice.
We went right into Exorcist.
You went boom.
Yeah.
First is another favorite of mine. Yeah.
What are we gonna do? We're gonna hit the ground running with Exorcist. So this will be the first time that we're actually going back and revisiting a franchise that we had covered before. So after we watch the movie, we're gonna look back at how we originally ranked those movies, re-rank them, see if it's gonna change the overall ranking of like all of the franchises. So I'm super excited for that movie to come out just because of the podcast that we do.
Nice.
Yeah, that's definitely my most anticipated as well because of that reason. Also because the Exorcist franchise is ranked pretty high in our ranking, but it has like 2 bad movies that are the same movie. Like they had the movie 4 and 5 are literally the same movie. They just made it twice, and they released the one they made second, and no one liked it. So they're like, maybe we release the one we made first, and so they just do
see
that.
what happens.
So we got to watch 2 movies that are the same movie, just like cut differently. And so that was like fun to talk about, but having 2 bad movies in there, brings down the ranking. So I'm excited for this new movie and excited to revisit our rankings and see if this movie's good, how far it could jump, how far it could raise up, because The Exorcist is definitely one of the franchises that we really like how it goes. We like how it starts out with such a great movie, Oscar nominated, just great, perfect movie. And then it takes this huge swerve, but still something that we like kind of enjoy. And then, it comes back to a third movie that's a ton of fun. So it's it's this very interesting franchise. So that I am very excited for. Also, I am excited for The Nun 2. And again, for a similar reason, we've covered the Conjuring franchise, and we didn't like The Nun. It came in at the bottom. The Nun came in at the bottom for us. But still, I'm excited to see The Nun 2. So, it's like, that franchise still gets me excited for the next movie. So I want to see where they go with it. I want to see where we can slot that in our rankings. And again, see what that can do to it in our entire franchise rankings. So those would be my 2 most anticipated. And like Alex said, it's mostly because they're movies we will be covering on the podcast.
Well, there's also one, Godzilla -1, I think, comes out this year. I don't know if you guys seen, they dropped the full trailer for that recently. I'm a huge Godzilla fan, so I'm pumped for that. I can't wait. Yeah,
that should be fun. I think Jackson and I have talked about with The Exorcist. We were cautiously optimistic.
I would go so far as to say skeptical. I want to enjoy it. I'm not anticipating that I'm going to enjoy it, but I think there will be things to like. But yeah.
Well, I mean, let's look at
mixed bag.
David Gordon Green's last movie, and I hated it the first time I saw it, and then thankfully I watched it again the next morning. It was on I think Peacock. It had already been out.
They did a date on that.
Yeah, so I got to watch it again, and I found things I could appreciate about it, but it still doesn't make me. I'm still nervous about The Exorcist.
Yeah, I'm nervous. It's his involvement that's got me a little nervous. Although I really like his first, like the Halloween 2018.
Oh yeah,
Kills. I've appreciated more thinking about it afterwards, but like leaving the theater, I was actually, I would say, like upset at how much I didn't like it.
Right.
And then I didn't see Ends because I let my buddy spoil it for me, and I didn't like what I'd heard, but that's kind of doing it a disservice. So I still need to see it to really make my own mind up about his trilogy, but I hope he knocks it out of the park. Let's put it that way. But The Exorcist, the first one, is one I hold near and dear to my heart, and I don't want to see anything, tarnished by it. And I know they're bringing back legacy characters, and that can go one way or another. So, like Gaius put, like cautiously optimistic, but still skeptical. A healthy dose. Yeah.
I know he may not watch it, but I really want Jackson to watch Halloween Ends during spooky season, because I just want to know if he's going to be like, all right, I appreciate it for what it was, or if it's going to make him just throw chairs in his room. So mad.
Flip a table. Well, this would be, I don't think I would have normally watched it on my own had I not been, had I not joined back to the Blockbuster. So like, just for the sake of spooky season, we'll be needing horror movies to go through. Like, I may as well just throw it on this year. So it could be the time to see it.
I think it'll help too, going in with really low expectations. So like when I went in, we were covering the Halloween franchise at the time. So I was so high on Halloween. I love 2018. I think Kills is really dumb, but a lot of fun.
Michael's awesome in it. That's really it.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's stuff that doesn't work, but he's awesome.
And then I saw Ends, and I'm like, "Oh no, what is this? This is not good." But then I watched it a second time when I wasn't coming in with all that baggage, all those expectations.
Yes,
and I found things I could appreciate about it.
There you go. So I gotta owe it to him and to watch it before I really make up my mind.
For sure. I think I like Ends, and I think the problem, I probably like it more than most people. I think the problem with Ends is it's called Halloween Ends. So there's expectations that it ends a trilogy. There's expectations that it ends 13 movies that started, way back in 78. There's all that expectation on it, and that is not what it is. If this movie was just Halloween 5, and it was just like in the middle of these 13 movies, like, I think it would be a much better reception to it. People would be like, oh, it's that weird one that's in the middle. I kind of like it. I think it's got that feeling to it, and the problem is it's called Halloween Ends.
No, you're right. I think when I saw that in the theater, it was a pretty packed theater for opening night. I mean, I guess because it's still Halloween, people are gonna go see it. When it was over, I could feel the physical disdain from like everyone in that theater, and I didn't even know how I felt about it until like days later. And I mean, I was talking to a bunch of people who watched it, who really did appreciate that it did something different, and it wasn't what we thought it was going to be. And that's how I learned to appreciate it. I was like, all right, I can accept it on that level. It's definitely not what they marketed at all.
No,
whatsoever. But I still think it's funny that there's still Halloween Ends discourse all over. Like, it's called X now. they still talk about that movie. They still talk about that movie in a way where everyone's going back and forth about it being like, years from now, it's going to be like a misunderstood masterpiece, or it's still going to be trash depending on who you're talking to. I think it's good enough where I don't think I need to defend it. I've told Jackson that like lately I've been like, I just want to defend Halloween Kills a bit more, because I think it's a lot more fun than people maybe give it credit for.
I'm with you.
I had a great time with it, and like Jackson said, like Michael is amazing in it. I mean, it was called Halloween Kills, and that's what happened. That's what he was doing. And the hospital stuff is a little cringy. The whole Evil Dies Tonight thing is cringy.
Is where I lose it.
My buddy and I,
everything about that.
My buddy and I will still randomly text each other like "Evil Dies Tonight" because it makes the other person laugh. Yeah.
Well, and that's I guess the good part about it is it is so goofy that you can have fun with it. But at the time where I only saw it the one time, I was like, "Fuck, that aspect of the movie didn't work." But that's a great point, though, Alex. Like, it could be exploited, I guess, after the fact in a good way for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. And by the way, that Exorcist Believer trailer has played. I think I've seen it 3 or 4 times attached to other movies now, and that trailer plays so differently. I mean, some people are laughing during parts of it when like that. Well, that's not supposed to be funny. That's not a good sign. Right. And then of course there's people like when Ellen Burstyn's character, when she pops up, you can just tell the people in the theater, the younger people are like, "Who's that?" Like, they that doesn't really matter to them. So I can't really gauge like what the interest is and how, what people are really thinking about it. I mean, it had a prime Friday the 13th release date until Taylor Swift jumped in and and released her movie on that day. And and within an hour, they moved their date up to like October 6th. They're like,
you don't compete. You don't compete with Taylor Swift.
There is no.
No. You find a different week. Speaking of the trailer, it played in front of Oppenheimer when I went to see Oppenheimer, and audience is not necessarily a horror watching audience. And the room, it was packed Oppenheimer theater, and the room felt uncomfortable. It felt like people were a little bit scared from that trailer. So that gave me like good feelings for the movie. I was like, okay, this room definitely, I can feel it. I can feel that everybody in this room's scared. So I've got hope. I've got hope for that movie.
Okay. Well, I can't wait to see how it all lands because I'm with Gaius. I have no idea what to anticipate. For this one.
I think we'll all be there opening night.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't know who I'm going to go with because my main movie watching guy is away for school right now. And like he'll have times to come back and forth, but it's like 3 hours away. So like I might be going solo to that one, but I need to see it though for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, this is brings up something else I wanted to ask you guys just for the sake of it because I don't know if you guys know. So Gaius and I are as far away as you can possibly be. He's in California. I'm in Eastern New Brunswick. I was curious about. You guys know each other in real life? Like you guys live in the same area? Or how'd you guys meet? Just quickly before we get into Wolf Creek here.
We're pretty far away too, but we're down. We're more down the middle, far away. So I'm in Canada, in Manitoba.
Hey, right on.
Yeah, and Alex is in Wisconsin.
Little Canada.
Yeah, we have. We have met twice in person, and those were great times. So yeah, we do this recording usually virtually, but yeah, we have done a couple recordings in person before because we have met in person. And it's been a great time.
We have ambitions as well of doing that. Which
we
I'm looking forward to.
We have a lot of ambitions and like what's it going to be like when we hang out for the first time in person? It really is cool because he's been on for over 8 months, and like I guess the biggest compliment from people that listen to it is that they were like, we can't tell that you guys don't hang out in real life. Like that's
right.
Even like some of my closest friends are still like blown away by like I don't know how you easily can like speak with him about that. Especially, I mean, he only had like one trial run. It was like he did one episode with me, and I was like, I thought that guy was good.
It clicked.
Let's do this again and again and again.
I was like, I want to see if he wants to do it like all the time. And honestly, like I sent him that message on Instagram. Like it was sometime in December, and it's like right around my birthday and then Christmas. I sent the message and then didn't check my messages for a while, and he had responded to it fairly quickly. And then when I went to go look back, I was like, oh God, it's been like a couple weeks since I was like, I'm so sorry.
I don't know if it was that long, but it might have been a few days for sure. Yeah.
It felt long. And I was like, all right, but he was still interested. And it's been I
was flattered. Oh man, it's been a blast. I look forward to this every week. And you're right, the chemistry is just there, which makes this just so easy, right? And that's just awesome. I had no idea. I would have thought maybe you guys lived down the street from each other. I had no idea. So it's pretty cool. You guys are in a similar boat there.
Yeah. It's clicked with us too. Although the story of how we started isn't as friendly as that because
okay.
Alex was working. You want to tell it, Alex, or you want me to?
Well, you can tell your version.
Okay, my version is Alex was working on a blog, a comic book blog that I was a fan of, and it had a staff of about 5, I think, at that time, around there. And I was a big fan of it. I was like, I commented all the time, read all the posts, commented on most of them. Big fan of it. Yeah. And I got a message from the guy in charge of it all, the guy who runs the blog, saying he'd like to bring me on to be a writer. So I was like, oh, excellent. That's right away. I'm on. It's great.
Compliment.
And then I find out that when he brought it up to the group, Alex was like, no way, fuck off. That guy can't join.
Okay.
And our first podcast came out of that blog. The podcast was for the blog. The blog was called Nothing But Comics. So we clicked on that podcast. But before then, he was not a big fan. He was not a big fan of me.
It had nothing to do with you. All right. I always clarify this.
Yes. What's Alex? How's your side differ?
Yeah, there was a lot of nasty behind the scenes stuff going on at the time with the blog. The guy who was running it, he had some issues and he was not very kind to the people who were there. And my thought process was, I don't want anyone else to come in and have to experience this. And that's why I said, no, don't bring them in.
Understood for sure. And now look what's come out of that though, which is awesome.
Yeah. But when we found out, when we, because I had started the Nothing But Comics podcast with one of the other guys from the blog. when we realized we needed a third person to bring on, I knew it was Dean. All right, so
right.
There's that.
Thank
There
you.
you go.
Yeah, thank you.
Credit where it's
Yeah,
due and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, Jackson like is aware like there's been so many ebbs and flows with Back to the Blockbuster, like before his time.
Yeah.
And you know, and it was good though when he got on, it felt like almost starting over, but you already had like a built-in audience, but like it really felt fresh and new again. And
it made did all the heavy lifting.
I mean, it made me excited to do the show again. And then when like we did our spinoff with my buddy Owen, who helped start the show in the beginning, but it was hard for him to do episodes every week. So the bi-weekly schedule is just a lot easier for him. Like he even said like it made those spinoff episodes a lot better. Like even though I think he's only recorded with Jackson 3 times.
Yeah.
Like Jackson as a guest on the spinoff and then just 2 on the regular show. And even they have a really good back and forth with each other. And like that's one of the things he was saying. He was like, you know, it feels like there's so much new energy and that's why it's exciting to like kind of come up with ideas for this. Like I have someone who's like, hey, I have this idea. Do you want to do it? And he's like, yeah, I love that idea. Let's do it. he's throwing stuff at me, I'm throwing stuff at him, and like we're just like two fucking nerds, like bringing like, what else are you gonna do?
The best sort of way. Yeah, I'm just happy to be here, man.
So it's
That's
exciting.
awesome.
And of course we're happy to have you guys on for our first spooky season episode. So I actually threw it to Jackson first. I was like, do you want to pick the first movie? And he was like, oh no, like if you want to pick it, you can pick it. And then sometimes I overthink picking what the first thing should be, and I was like, oh, what if it sucks? Like I don't know what to.
No, there's a lot of pressure. Listen,
that's why I didn't want it. I was like,
that's why he didn't want to do it.
Man. Take it.
We get it.
But this particular movie, we talked about that on the show, like in depth. We brought it up before, and I was like, all right, and I was like going through like my stuff back here, like which movie should we do? And then I just sent him like a shot of the poster, like, all right, how do you feel about starting with this one? And he was like, yeah, all right, fuck yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, brother. Yeah.
So it felt like a good one to get into, and we glad you guys are joining us to discuss Wolf Creek, a 2005 Australian horror film written, co-produced, and directed by Greg McLean. Plot concerns three backpackers who find themselves taken captive and subsequently hunted by Mick Taylor, a sadistic, psychopathic serial killer in the Australian outback. The film was ambiguously marketed as being based on true events because its plots bore elements reminiscent of real life murders of backpackers in that particular area. The movie was produced for $1.1 million and ended up making $27.7 million worldwide. Whoa. And I didn't realize this at the time of its release. I thought it was I thought it got better reviews when it came out, but the reviews were kind of mixed. And there were some reviewers, particularly Roger Ebert, who gave it 0 stars and was very
Roger, why?
was very upset with its depiction of violence, particularly violence against women in the film. Okay. With these kind of episodes, we like to kind of go around and kind of see like when you first discovered the movie, or if it was the first time watch, like whatever that might be. So, Alex, if you want to kick it off, when did you first see it?
Okay, so I remember having watched this movie. It probably was around when it came out, or not, when it came out on to rent, because my family, we would rent a lot of horror movies. So yes. I know I've seen this movie. I can't remember exactly when or the first time, but you said the name, or Dean told me the name. You guys were talking, and I'm like, okay, that's a good movie. I remember some parts of it. And then I started watching it, and I'm like, okay, I remember this. I remember, oh yeah, this movie's really fucking bleak. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. This is so dark. I'm very interested to see how Dean takes this.
Oh, Dean, how did you take it?
So I do like bleakness. And I do like likable characters. And this movie had both those things. So my history with it is I learned it was a movie. Gaius, when you messaged me, let's do Wolf Creek. That's when I learned it was a movie. Nice. I've never heard of this movie before.
Fantastic.
And I looked it up. I have actually recently been doing some running through some 2000 horror movies, and especially ones that are like lesser known, because that's a time when I wasn't watching horror movies, so I missed all that stuff.
Right.
And I actually ended up watching Rogue because of that, which is another movie that this director did.
Yeah.
And I liked Rogue. Rogue is just like a giant crocodile movie in Australia.
Oh, I know what you're talking about now. Oh, I know he did that. That's cool.
And I'm a big fan of, I mentioned on my podcast, I'm a big fan when nature is the villain in the movie. And so like big animals, great. Love it. I love a big animal movie. So yeah, I was excited. I was excited to get into Wolf Creek. And I think I messaged Alex like 30 minutes in. I'm like, I'm really digging this thing. I'm really liking this.
That's before anything even happens.
Right, and that's what I said.
Yeah.
I told him, I said, come back to me when you finish the movie.
Yeah, there you
Come
go.
back when it's over. It is, I took it, I think I took it very well. I liked it. I liked it quite a bit. I think it was very effective. I think it was a very effective movie, especially on me. I was, I like movies where I'm just drawn really into the characters, really start liking the characters, so that when the movie decides that it's going to punish these characters, I feel it. And I felt it big time in this movie. And so I was really into the movie. I had I had hands on my face, hands on my head the whole time, just like, what is going on? Why is this happening to the characters I love? I'm a big fan.
Nice. Well, you know what's cool is that I'm glad that, and that's funny that like the first time you heard of it was when I sent you a message, because
that's the case for me a lot.
You could have easily been like, yeah, I don't know that one. Can you let us know when you're doing something else later in the month? But I'm glad that you went with it.
Yeah,
we're usually down for anything.
We're down for, especially if I haven't heard of it. That just makes me more interested in it. I'm like, I haven't heard of this. Like, why? What did I miss? I wasn't watching horror movies in 2005. Let's do it. Let's watch this one. So I was pumped. I was pumped to do this.
Nice. I also love knowing why Jackson didn't want to pick first as well. Sorry, that was going back on it.
I was pleasantly surprised when you threw this one out there, though. I was like, hell yeah, because I don't know if we had talked about it. Just for the sake of continuity, I'll let you know, because I want to hear, Gaius, your experience with how far you go back with this movie. But I actually had seen this movie for the first time this year, not for this episode, but Cam and we had watched this. I wouldn't remember what month, like maybe in April or May or March, like sometime earlier in the year. But I had known of its existence for years, just throughout different horror communities online. And I think I had browsed this movie a few times at like Blockbuster, we have a lot of just like corner stores and gas stations here that rent movies. And I know I picked it up before, but didn't get the chance to see it until this year. So I'm a few months in where it was perfect for a rewatch. I remember most of what I was watching, but picking up and appreciating different things. So 2 watches this year of it. And this would be one I would revisit, I'm sure, in the future. And there's a sequel too that I think is more for, I don't think it's as well regarded, but it's, if you're interested in the character of Mick Taylor, I guess it's his time to shine too. So maybe worth checking out. Might be a little bit of a franchise. And I think there's a show too, isn't there, Gaius? Or a series?
Web series.
A web series. Okay.
Yeah.
I'd guess it's shit. I don't know though. Okay. Any idea?
I mean, my mom watches a ton of stuff, but I was talking to her today. We had a family get together earlier, and I had mentioned that I was going to be talking about Wolf Creek later, and she goes, "Oh yeah, I like that movie. I really like the show too." So at least it has the recommendation of my mother. So there's that.
There you go.
You wouldn't catch my mom dead watching something like this. She hates stuff like this. Yeah.
My mom would get through that first hour where not a lot happens, and then once shit got real, she would turn it off. She would be completely done with it.
That's sweet though.
I saw the movie in theaters when it came out.
Of course.
I went with I was always a person that made my friends go to horror movies no matter what it was.
They're a good friend.
And they were even people, some that were like, I don't know if I want to see it, but I'll go with you because we're friends. That a lot of people were reluctant that way. This is one of those movies that I think there were 6 of us that went, and I remember it being split down the middle of we liked it, half of us, and then the other half, their main complaint was it took a long time for something to happen. I mean, I think you're an hour in before before all the stuff really goes down. But I appreciate a slow burn, especially if that first hour is interesting. And I think, Dean, you brought up the characters are very likable and interesting, and so you're getting to know them and their dynamics, and that is what is interesting to start. And then also the movie kind of creating this its sense of atmosphere without even anything scary happening yet. Like kind of putting you in the location that they're in, like you're seeing like kind of the vastness of where they're at and how alone they're kind of already, even though they're on this road trip and everything. So you're setting up all these like kind of cues that will be used later to really kind of elicit fear. And I think that's why that first hour really works. And I also think, of course you need to get to know them because you really need to care about what ultimately happens to them.
Well, the
plot, all this stuff started.
Yeah, no. The truthfully, I think the plot is really thin in this movie. There's not a whole lot that happens. So if you don't care about the characters by the end of it, the whole movie doesn't work. Because you don't, not that much happens really. So by having us spend that hour or so with the characters, them just going on their road trip together, you see two of the characters who start off the movie sort of being attracted to the other, and then they finally do come together. They acknowledge it with each other. You grow to like them. You want to see more of it. Well, now it's time to kill them. Let's go.
Exactly.
We often talk about, me and Alex, the two types of horror movies, where you despise the characters and you want them to die, and then the other type where you really love the characters and you just like are upset when they die. This movie can't be the other way. This movie can't be the way where you despise the characters and want them to die, because you cannot be on Mick's side. You cannot be with Mick at all in this movie.
Well, that's a messed up movie
awful.
if he's the hero.
Exactly. There's nothing goofy about him. He's not a Freddy Krueger or anything. There's nothing like
with the hat. He looks like he could pull it off, though, couldn't he? Yeah,
right.
The hat does.
No, he's just a scary motherfucker.
You know what just gave me?
Bad
I was
dude.
Thinking of this when I was watching. There's a sequence where, and again, you have to forgive me, I'm gonna probably ask this many times. I wasn't really doing a good job of keeping track of the female characters. I know it's Liz and Christy, but who's who in which scene I'm not remembering. But there's a scene where the one who gets shot by him, then
Christy.
the car.
That's
Christy.
Christy.
There's a scene where she's like gets the guy's car and she's going down the highway and he's behind her, and you see him in his like the brim of his hat, like he's way down the road, and it was giving me Jeepers Creepers vibes.
Oh sure,
It's like Wrong Turn and Jeepers Creepers in Australia.
Yeah, for sure.
I was thinking a lot about Wrong Turn when watching this movie, because there were a lot of these sorts of movies that all came out around the same time. Something where you're just out and you're in an unfamiliar place, and usually there's some sort of backwater hillbilly that you run into, and they kill you. There are a lot of those movies made, but this one I think spent more time, like I said before, with the characters, where I don't really ever need to revisit Wrong Turn. That's whatever. Right. It's a fine movie, but this movie, I think there's a little bit more to it.
Okay,
right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That'd be a series for you guys to dive into, though. There's a bunch of those.
There's a bunch.
We revisited that earlier this year. I got a lot of love for the Wrong Turn, at least the first couple. But I wanted to piggyback on something that you had mentioned too, Gaius, and now that I think about it, Dean, in the sense of nature sort of being the enemy in a movie, and Gaius about the outback. I was just curious while watching, because I just didn't find myself really knowing I don't know a whole lot about Australia, other than it scares the shit out of me for whole other different reasons beyond backwater serial killers. So I was just curious. But the outback makes up, I would have thought it was a smaller chunk, but it's 70% of Australia's landmass is the outback. So like, talk about nature being like the enemy in the movie. I feel like Mick is kind of like the outback personified in a sense, like everything is out there to kill you. And it's 5 million square kilometers, which I found like ridiculous. That is crazy. Way bigger than I thought. Did you guys know anything about its size, or?
I had no idea.
No.
Oh yeah, no.
Pretty dire place to get strung up and lost in.
Yeah.
I just thought that was crazy. Yeah, it is really.
Yeah. No, just same with you, Jackson. I was like, I would never go there.
No.
There's too many creatures there that can kill you. So many things that can kill you. Now, this is just another reason why I'm not going to go there. I'm wearing my The Great Indoors t-shirt today.
There you go.
That's where I live, is indoors. There's no way you're finding me in Australia ever.
Agreed, brother.
Yeah, so that just like the vastness of it, it felt like they were so helpless. Like nobody was ever going to come by. Like there's a part where Mick shoots a girl on the side of the road, and he doesn't
there's no fear.
one's around,
Right.
no
There's
fear.
nothing.
He's not checking over his shoulder. He just pulls out his gun and shoots her because there's going to be nobody for miles. They're not even going to hear.
Impunity,
No one's even
yeah.
going to hear that thing. Like, man, it just felt like they were done. Like there was no way that they were going to find their way out of there at all. Even just Mick having everybody's stuff just kind of out in the open, like all the people who he's taken in, he's got that stuff out in the open.
Yeah.
Nobody has ever visited that place ever. You know, no one has just come across that place
voluntarily. Yeah.
Voluntarily. Like, yeah, no one has ever just stumbled upon and be like, oh, hey, who's this guy?
Yeah.
Right.
That has never happened.
He's never been a person of interest or anything.
Nope.
Like, it's just like, oh,
Never.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
No.
That is pretty interesting. Well, I remember when we first saw this, and actually one of my buddies that saw this movie in theaters with me, I mentioned we were doing this for today, and he was just like, I feel like those kind of movies like ruined you from wanting to take trips like this. And I did, like, trips like this don't sound fun to me because of like what because of what could potentially, and not even the serial killer part. It's the whole like car breaking down in the middle of nowhere, that kind of thing, just being alone in that kind of like situation. That alone terrifies me. Even if I was with two other people, like I know myself, I wouldn't handle myself well in that kind of situation. And like when I was watching it for this again, you really do feel that, especially once it turns to night and they're still in their car and they're like, what, like basically like, what are we gonna do? They just have to like wait for someone to, and then that is basically what happens. And when they start freaking out about the lights and everything, and they're like, what is that? What's coming toward? Like that's the kind of reaction I would have, like, there's been no one else here this entire time, like what's going on?
Aliens.
And they think it's because of that conversation they were having. They think it's like something else. And but then there's that, I guess, feeling of relief when they realize that it's someone that might be here to help us. Now I mean
that guy.
Yeah, and of course, like like from watching it, like this guy won't be helpful. But is there any sense when you're watching it that like, okay, I can see why they would think this guy's not so bad, and he might not do anything murderous, like because he's not overtly creepy or anything like that. He's funny in his own way. I can see like even some of my friends being like, oh, that guy's silly, he's harmless, like whatever, let's see where he takes this.
Honestly, when you have no other option, you have this guy come up and you're so nervous, you're so scared, you're so anxious that any sort of like comfort you're going to take. My wife and I have actually done like long road trips before, and we've been in a situation where we're in the middle of Utah and we had a rental car and the battery the battery died. We were stuck. We couldn't go anywhere. Thankfully, the guy we were staying in his like Airbnb, but he wasn't we weren't right there, so we called him. We're like, hey, can you help us? We talked to the guy once before, and thankfully he was a nice guy. He didn't take us somewhere and kill us. But yeah, I've felt that before. Like there's nothing around. I'm from Wisconsin. We're in Utah. All right, I don't know anyone in this area. We are totally alone, except for the couple of people that we've met along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
right.
It's a naturally scary predicament to be in,
for sure.
Yeah.
I think they did a great job setting up Mick and the decisions that the group's going to take regarding Mick, because I love actually the alien talk that they had, and that they think right away that it could be an alien. That totally takes your mind off of, oh, what if this person driving up to me is bad? Like they're not even thinking about that. They're just thinking like, oh shit, it's an alien.
They're
We're going to
really
take it up into the space. When it's just a person, they're like, great, I'm happy. I haven't even thought about that you could be bad and that you could be wanting to kill me or do me harm.
I think part of it too, and Dean, we've talked about this a little bit with some of the movies. This movie takes place in 1999. All right, so it's pre 9/11. It's pre everyone always looking over their shoulder, questioning your neighbor, questioning motives of other people. So they go to aliens before they go to, oh, this person could harm me.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. And I think a big aspect of his character too is that he's an asshole. Like he's friendly, but he's still like an asshole while doing it. He'll still make fun of them, and you kind of just feel like he's being himself. So if he really just wants to help out, like I think if he was overly nice, then you might be like, he's a little too nice. Why does he want to help us out? Why does he want to take us back to his place? But because he's just kind of like a dick about it, he's just like, whatever, man. Like, yeah, you can come if you want. I'm going south. All that stuff. It's just like, yeah, I guess we go with this guy. Like, because he doesn't seem to care if we do or we don't.
Exactly.
I agree. I love the uncomfortable stuff that kind of comes like when they are talking about the car, when he's like, oh, I'll give you a tow and I'll fix it. And then all three of them are discussing like, well, we don't have the money to pay him. Like, what are you going to do? Yeah. And like, I don't have any cash. And then they basically are like, well, Ben, you go talk to him. And they're like, well, no, like basically like, you're basically like, you're girls. Why don't you go? And like, no, it's a bloke thing. You should go talk to him. and then that him trying to have that conversation with them. And it's so awkward and uncomfortable where it's just like,
authentic seeming.
It's like that awkward silence, and he's like, "Well, you like, of course you don't have to pay me." And then there's like a relief, like, "Oh God, you like, okay, whatever." And then like when you cut from that, and they're in the car, and they're like, when they're dialogue, and they're basically talking about like, it seems like we've been driving a really long time, and you realize like, even then, like we were watching the movie, like, yeah, he's taking them a lot further than he probably led them to believe.
Right.
But then there is that sense of relief when they get there, and he's like, they're sitting around the fire and like talking and like shooting the shit, and then like you kind of have that relief again where like, all right, maybe nothing will go wrong. I just love how it kind of plays with your emotions and expectations until you see, well, things are not going to be great. After they fall asleep.
Yes, especially in the different scenarios where they are, like the different groups they're in. So when they're just them three in the car and they're being towed, they're nervous. They're nervous about where they're going. Even when they get there, they're nervous, but in the car. But then as soon as you get out of the car and you're with the guy that's helping you out, you have to put that aside and not show them that you're nervous and just be like, oh yeah, thanks for being so helpful. And they're so friendly about it. So I do like that. I like that they're sort of still nervous, but they're hiding it. They're hiding their nervousness.
Yeah, there's a lot of rise and falls to their terror. So eventually there comes a point where they go, okay, I don't need to be afraid, because every time I've been afraid, it turned out to be nothing. It turned out to all just be something in my head, something I made up. Well, you need to be afraid.
Yes. Yeah. And they also want to appear appreciative of what this person's offering them too, right? Like, because there's also that other awkward moment where Liz goes to talk to him while he's fixing the car, and she's basically kind of like, we would love to like kind of get out of here like as soon as possible. Yeah. And it's like that awkward silence. He kind of like acknowledges her, and she kind of stands there, kind of like, even without saying it, kind of like, oh, okay, good talk. And then like, totally. So like, it's a fine line of them being like, yeah, he's helping us, but we also like, we don't want to be here. Any longer than we need to. And I love after that whole like fade to black, and then when it comes back and she's just tied up, and it's just,
then the movie really begins.
And your brain is like, your brain's like, when the hell did this all transpire? How long? You're right. And the movie fully begins at that point. And I know there's a lot to talk about within those sequences. I think for a lot of people that think it's too slow, I think there is a lot of meat in the last like 30 plus minutes of the movie that first hour, even if you're like, oh, it took a while to get here, there's enough there where it's worth it. Like, it's like the reward is getting to that, stuff that makes up like the
exactly.
It really works.
I think there's got to be a lot of that character building to understand certain decisions that are going to happen during this end period, where like Liz is definitely going to go back for Christy, but they don't necessarily care about Ben. Like, if they're not going to go out of their way to go find Ben, because like their lives are more important than this guy that they just met and are now having fun with, but I like Liz going back for Christy, but them not even really talking about Ben. Like, she calls out his name a couple times, but she's not gonna go out of her way to find him.
She's not checking doors. Same with Ben. Ben doesn't say or even do any looking for them when it's time for him to leave.
Yeah, he's just out.
Which might be cruel, but it's probably one of the most realistic parts of like, how one would react in a situation like that, especially if we don't have like a ton of history. You're not my best friend. Like,
maybe a blooming relationship.
In a lot of these situations, most people would choose self-preservation over, most other options. But you're right with, in this situation with two girls, like, she has a relationship with her and like will do what she can to try to help her. I do love that they say like she just calls out his name a couple times, kind of like, "Oh, I tried." I don't know.
More than he did.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I also thought the movie did a good job. I'm not saying that this is a horror movie that like needed a final girl by any means, but the movie, at least the way the movie's framed and like how you're getting to know a lot of these people, it really felt like Liz was going to be the one we would be with the longest,
for sure.
And the fact that she died first, like, still shocks me like today. That like, and how she gets
me today too. Yeah,
that's sort of
Michael Myers.
Extreme.
Right. That's sort of for me the point of no return, where because you're wondering, are these characters going to make it out alive?
Yeah,
and then the minute that Liz is turned into a head on a stick, as Mick says, I mean, holy shit. As soon as he does that, I think, oh, okay, everyone's dead. Like that's the only way this can happen is that everyone dies. Now, of course, Ben gets away, but I never had any hope for the characters after that.
Right.
Yeah. I think a very interesting thing happens at that moment when you know that Liz is kind of doomed, because you start with Christy in a very bad situation. Mick is like being awful to her. He's got her tied up to a post. He's shooting at her. He's, making sexual advances, all these things. You're like, this is horrible. I feel so bad for Christy. And then you kind of switch to them getting away a bit. And then Liz has to go back to find a car. And this happens to Liz. Now what I'm thinking is, please kill Christy so fast. Like, do not catch Christy. Every time Mick is out there and Christy's out there, I'm like, please just take a bullet in the head. Because if he catches you, I know this is not going to end up well. And if he catches you, I'm not going to like it.
Right.
So just end her. I want her to die. When he shoots her on the side of the road, I'm like, thank goodness he didn't take her back to his place.
That was the best way she could have gone out, is just getting shot.
Oddly enough, as messed up as it sounds, she's kind of the lucky one, because we're only led to believe what he might still be doing with Liz, because we don't ever see her fate off screen. I mean, we know she's not destined for a long, healthy life, but she's alive by the last time we see her, and she's not addressed again, and she's not going anywhere. So we can only imagine. He does mention how that other corpse he has in there hung on for months. So you're right. Yeah, definitely terrible to think what she may have endured before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what you see with Liz too is that you can tell the way he kills her is like, he was very, very pissed at the fact that, like, one, she shot at him, grazed him, kind of caused him a lot of trouble, and you can tell that, like, that all that rage is being taken out on her for, like, he makes that comment about him messing up her truck and like all that other his truck and all that. Like, you can tell, like, everything he's taking out on her is very, like, personal. This was not going to be easy because of, like, she gave him trouble.
When really he should be angry at himself. This man needs to work on his knot tying skills. All right. Because if he was better at knots, this movie would be totally different. She would have never been able to escape.
That's right.
And also, what's interesting about movies like this too, okay, they kind of set up the fact where she's looking at the video camera and it's like, clearly this has happened to other people. He's done this before.
Love that moment. That goes very far
moment,
and
it's chilling too. And he's saying a lot of the same things that he said to them, to those people as well, to like kind of lure them in. I always, when I watch movies like this, though, I imagine that this set of characters are like the first set of characters to give him this kind of trouble, where they're like, oh, like they almost got away. This doesn't usually happen, and this was a lot easier before, maybe. That's like that kind of. Whenever I'm watching something like this, I always think like, this particular trio, or I always the two girls mostly, were like not easy. Compared to like the other people he's done this to, and I also love the video camera thing too, because I was, it's funny, when I was watching it today for this, I was like, all right, I do remember the whole thing of her watching it and her watching Ben film himself, and then you see the truck in the background, like in the theater. I was like, oh shit, and then like watching it today, I was like, I'm gonna see if I can just catch it, like just watching it, and if you're really not paying too close attention, you don't really like catch it yourself when you're watching the movie. But that is a really chilling thing to see when like he was there like watching them like for a really long time before they even got
it wasn't until I watched today that I realized he wasn't the same guy that's kind of chastising them in the bar originally, because it's he
does look like him though.
It's just the mutton chops he's missing. I was like, he doesn't have them, that's not him. But I was like, I thought that was him. And Also, I guess that guy is pretty massive too, but that scene is one to put you on edge as well too, especially when he stands up and Ben is like, "Oh yes, I am not talking my way out of this one."
Yeah.
Right. Well, I love when they get back to the car and he's like, I should have punched him.
Yeah,
Like,
that.
no, you shouldn't.
I cheat his ass.
No,
Yeah.
He
You should
responded appropriately.
Yes, just
Yeah.
leave, please.
Big talk once you get back in the car.
Now, everything kind of went weird for a second. I lost you guys for a minute, so I'm sorry if you talked about this while everything was resetting here. But 2 chilling moments came from her looking at the video. First one was the last group, or whichever group, but one of the past ones. There was a kid involved.
yeah,
You know, you see the kid and you just think, God, I'm so glad I'm not watching that story.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Because that's just like give a gut punch right there.
Yeah.
And also I love the moment when the camera turns from when Ben had it and you see that truck.
Yeah.
You see that and you're like, shit. So this is what he does. You know, that's he picks him up there. And
I wonder if
really creepy to think about it that way, where you're just like the amount of detail that goes into it. Like they get there, they park, they go off to like do their thing. He's fucked with their car while they're gone, and like put them in a position where they can't get away. Now, like the detail in it is what makes it really creepy and unsettling. That that person was there doing this and they had no idea, and how long he was kind of like in their orbit before they even like really met him face to face. Yeah.
And he even acknowledges like how much work he puts into it. I don't remember who he's yelling at. It might be Liz. He's like, "Do you know how much time I spent ripping the car parts out to make this work? All right, now you're gonna put me through all of this."
Yeah. And I like the whole car not working and Ben not really knowing about cars. Like I like that he took the car to get, serviced earlier and he didn't even really know what the guy was doing, but he knew he just had to keep stepping on the gas. And so then, so that, when they're in that situation, he doesn't know what to do. And also their like watches all stopping at the same time. He thinks that could be the same thing, so like as probably
what's the
because
aliens?
He doesn't know about cars. He could be like, "Oh, our watches stopped and our car stopped." Like it's the same thing. That's why it happened. It's just where we are.
I'm kind of curious too if that was a Mick thing or if that was like, because it doesn't really expand. At least if it
the watches.
does, yeah.
I think it had something to do with like the radiation of the magnetism of the crater that they were in.
Yeah,
I think that's why the watches stopped.
Sounds about right.
So, yeah.
I'm no scientist.
Or aliens.
Headcanon. Or aliens. Seriously, I was waiting for the aliens to show up even by the end of the movie. Yeah.
On that note,
I wanted aliens.
Yeah.
You're waiting for some like 10 Cloverfield Lane like plot twist.
Right.
Australian signs.
Yeah.
On that,
I do want.
Sorry. No, go ahead. No. I was gonna say on that note of like the aliens and then that leading into them being possibly afraid of this phenomenon they're not understanding before Mick rolls up. There is a lot of, and something I love in a movie, I'm sure you guys can all relate, when there is setup and payoff. Like another huge instance in this movie being when Mick is explaining what he did for a career when he was hunting pigs and just wild animals and stuff. That gives him the skill that he's of hunting and sharpshooting that he's later displays in the movie, instead of him just arbitrarily being a great marksman. Like he's planting those seeds earlier, and then we're going to see this later. There's countless examples of that throughout this movie, again with the truck, which is kind of like a reverse setup and payoff, showing how it was set up long before we even realized it was part of the plan. But love when a movie drops hints and then actually follows up on them later in the film.
I mean, this is a pretty tight movie. There's not, it doesn't have a super long runtime. And even when people say, the stuff at the beginning is boring, it doesn't mean anything to the whole. I disagree with that, of course. And I think the rest of us do. We all disagree with that. But I think that is carried through the whole movie. There's nothing that they ever bring up in this that doesn't pay off or that doesn't somehow contribute to the whole.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that conversation of him, of what he did for his past job, seeing that pay off later, that's just the whole movie does that. And
there's a reason why he's talking about it. Even if it's not, it doesn't have to be all action all the time, as long as what's being discussed or shown to, there's a reason behind it.
Right. There's no fluff in this movie.
There's really not. I could do without the pool party scene, but I get we're trying to get to these characters.
Who they are.
It makes sense why it's there, but It was a little 2000s, a little cringy for me, but
For sure.
yeah.
Well, that was just the ugly yellow filter they had on most of this movie. Because that's so many movies during this. I messaged that to Dean. I'm like, and the movie has a fucking yellow filter that I hate. We've had that show up in other movies, and it drives me nuts.
On that note, the cinematography. There are some shots in this movie, the landscape and the sunset.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's so slept on. I think the shot too. I was thinking about this of when the girls are hanging onto like the cliff after they ditch the truck and he comes up and the moon's behind him. Holding a rifle. One of the best shots. Yeah, the silhouette shot of him. So cool. My god, that is an amazing shot.
Yeah, one of my favorite shots is actually right before he kills Christy and she's crawling away. Yeah. We have this sort of like panned out shot where he's standing on the left hand side of the screen,
super wide
and she's
angle.
trying to crawl out to the right, and then he shoots her, of course. But it looks so good.
You're right. Yeah,
I was kind of wondering what you guys thought after he shoots her, and his reaction to when it's done. It almost feels like when this hunt is over for him, there's like almost something that he loses out. Like it's not. I don't know. It really, his reaction to it was interesting after this was all like this was all over. And I'm not saying that he felt remorse by any means, but there's almost like his look on his face is almost like, oh, like this is something that's so exciting for him when he does it. That when it's done, it's like, oh, it's like a loss, like a real loss, right? And not to say, for someone like him.
Sure. Right. Well, I mean, he had talked about keeping the one alive for months. And then this one he kills right away. We clearly saw he was going to rape her earlier before Liz got involved. So it was probably he was sad that he missed out on all of that, the torture that comes before him eventually killing them.
Yeah, I think also like his by the campfire when he was talking about all the hunting, there was so much joy. He had so much joy in like the hunting and even like the close-up kills he really like loved. And so you're sitting around this campfire and everyone's like, this is weird. This guy's like talking, he just like really loves killing these animals. So I was actually expecting him to let them loose and hunt them. I thought he just wanted like the high of hunting them again,
right?
Because he was saying he doesn't do it anymore. That's not his job anymore. So I thought that's where we were going. So when they were captured and he like keeps them alive for months, I was like, okay, he's sadistic, but that's different than I thought. So I wonder if him like actually getting to hunt Christy at that point after he kills her, he's like, interesting. Like that I actually got to hunt her there, and maybe he's just thinking about that. Actually from long range, like picking off two people. And being like, I guess I also have to get rid of their bodies because like he was probably thinking like I can't just leave them here, right? I got to get rid of them. There was all that was going on in his head.
I think there's something to be said about him in the hunt by having, because he has Ben and Liz and Christy all separated, and he's sort of taking a one at a time approach. So it's sort of in a way he's kind of, even though he's pretty thorough, like he crucifies Ben, but he's still leaving him unattended. There's still a chance that he could break out and escape. And I feel like Mick is completely okay with that because like, where's he going to go?
Right.
If he gets a chance to go hunt someone down, he's going to take it, which I think that says something about him kind of encouraging a little bit of a hunt being there after he has them tied up. And it's like, oh, if they get away, I don't necessarily, because he could bring them all to one room and make them watch or keep them otherwise occupied, but he chooses not to. And I feel like it's because, it's kind of, he wants them to escape maybe so that he can track them down again.
Well, there's
That's
that.
kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I think he's just so cocky. Like Gaius had mentioned before, when we watch movies like this, this is the first time that something like this has ever happened. People haven't escaped before. So he's never, he lets his guard down because he always thinks he has the accurate. He always has the upper hand. I mean, I think either interpretation works, but I just think he is so overconfident that he feels like he can do those things and he's still going to win at the end of it.
It is home field advantage for sure too for him. So But back to you, Gaius, what you were saying before you let me go.
No, you're good. No. I just also love what this movie does too is give you a smidge of hope and then like snatch it away. So like when Liz gets in the car, she has the keys and like, all right, she just got the car and then she starts it and then you hear that laugh of his first and then he's just in the back seat. And he does like sticks it like I remember my friend Chris distinctly in the theater when we saw this. When as soon as he heard the laugh, he was like, "Fuck." Because he was just so like invested in her getting away,
caught off guard probably. I was.
And then of course when Christy finds the guy when that guy's driving by and he stops for her and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to help you," and then you hear that first faint like the bullet like hitting his like little canteen, and it was just
Yeah.
the hole. And again, another like oh fuck moment. Like, really, like, they're like they're not gonna get away, are they? And like it's I have even my friends who love horror movies. They'll be honest, it's hard for them. Like you mentioned earlier, that this movie is very bleak. Some of them don't like bleak horror movies where like like everyone dies. I mean, I know that Ben survives, but like like we've watched these two female characters like go through it, and not even one of them is gonna make it.
Right.
I know a lot of people that don't like those kind of endings, because it's really not uplifting by the end of it. You don't feel really good when you're coming out of it, but it is also probably a little bit more realistic. I mean, I enjoy about a movie like this, and which is why I think the first hour works too, is that you're being put in a situation where this is just a normal kind of this is a trip for them. Like they're like expecting this thing to happen to them. That's why I love that everything is so normal until it isn't. And that is exactly what a situation like this would be like if you were in it. Like you don't expect to find yourself in something like this at all.
Right.
I think that's why the movie ultimately really works, because it catches you off guard in that way. Even though you know exactly what you're going to see, but like you have this sense of like, oh, now everything seems fine until like, oh shit, now it isn't.
I can see people being really turned off by this because it is really mean-spirited too, in a lot of ways, especially with letting Ben be the one who lives. He's the one who makes it out. This really isn't like my go-to kind of movie. I don't mind bleak, but mean-spirited sometimes is a little hard for me. I actually think that Greg McLean, who directed this movie, does a better job with that in the Belko Experiment. Have you guys seen?
Yeah,
that's really good.
That's really good.
I've not seen it, but
right. Okay. So that one is mean-spirited, but it's also just everything's cranked to 11. So there's this like fun element to it too, where it sort of takes away from you sort of feeling sick throughout it, because it is just so ridiculous.
Okay. Yeah. I really got to see that.
I think the way he set this movie up, it gives you those like, oh fuck moments, because you get those small wins, and because you can kind of tell at that point things might not turn out well. It's starting to be like bleak. You're like, I don't know if they're gonna make it. So then the small wins you get really excited for. And so then when it's just like, I think back to like when she gets the gun and she's trying all the bullets, and it's like, oh, she can't find the bullets that go in. She finds the bullets. You're like, yes, okay, now she has a gun, we're good. And then she drops it down into like a well, and you're like, oh fuck, you lost the gun. Yeah. And then, then she goes to the car. She's trying all the different keys. And that's when you're like, you know what that feels like? You know what that tension must feel like, just to go through hundreds of keys or whatever, how many she has, going through all those keys, hoping it sticks in the car. You get it in the car. You get the car started. Oh, fuck, he's in the back seat. Like, it just is so effective. It's like, it's the type of thing that's very effective for me, because I'm cheering for her so hard.
Yeah. I do love when she shoots him and it like kind of grazes him, and then she can't fire and shoot him again. I was kind of laughing because when she hits him in the back twice with the butt of the gun, it felt almost like it read like almost like a love tap. She didn't hit him hard, but I guess she had like no. I mean she had no energy at that point. I mean, we have no idea exactly how she feels after like what he gave them to like knock them out. But in my mind, I was like, dude, a headshot, at least hit him in the head.
I'm screaming at her like, jam it in there.
Speaking on the mean-spiritedness of it and the bleakness of it, I do want to get your opinion, because we did talk about a few reviewers felt about it, Roger Ebert in particular, who is kind of inconsistent with how he feels about certain horror movies. Like he didn't like this one, but he is a big fan of Wes Craven's Last House on the Left, which is also very violent, and against women too, and a little mean. I'm not more than a little bit mean-spirited, but when he gave it 0 stars, he said it is a film with one clear purpose: to establish the commercial credentials of its director by showing his skill at depicting the brutal tracking, torture, and mutilation of screaming young women. I wanted to walk out of the theater and keep on walking. And then the Seattle Times said the writer for that said this was the first movie she ever walked out of, and she called watching the film punishment and wondered how someone's real death inspired this entertainment. So how do you feel about those kind of critical assessments of it? I mean, did they really not get the point, or is that fair? Didn't feel that way.
I think they're fair. I think everyone's like experience watching the movie is valid. So if they
Sure.
felt like that was offensive, then it was offensive. For me, I find myself often like being sensitive to violence against women in these horror movies and trying to figure out if it is mean-spirited, if it was just for shock value, if it's a pattern that this director does, then it's like, okay, that's kind of weird that you always use that as a way to show how evil your characters are. It's always violence against women that you do. So I don't feel watching this movie that it was that. I don't feel like it was mean-spirited towards women particularly. I don't feel, especially seeing some of the director's other movies, I felt like that was these characters in the situation getting out of it. I don't think the shock value of the movie is in that violence towards those women. I thought that like I said, it wasn't mean-spirited. I never got that from it.
Okay. So while I thought it was mean-spirited, I didn't think that it was like particularly towards, I mean, in this movie, they happen to be women, but I don't think it was the director making it a point to be against the women. They just happen to be, those were the characters in this movie. I don't know. But I for sure see the movie as mean-spirited. Absolutely. Because it really, at the end of the day, there's no point to the movie other than these characters are all taken by this crazy man and they're picked off, and he would have done even worse things to them. He kills them, one makes it away, and then he's even then arrested for the deaths of the women. Yeah. So, and there's never any punishment for the villain in the movie. Not that there has to be. It's just that's the reason why I think that it is mean-spirited. Mm-hmm. But there's also, like, I could watch this movie again before, and I've gone on record saying I'm not a fan of, except for the first movie, I'm not a fan of the Saw franchise. Okay. I don't like those, because those, to me, the Saw franchise, or like The Purge, that's like the epitome of mean-spirited. I really dislike those sorts of movies. This one isn't as bad as those for me. Like I said, I could go back and watch those again, where those I really have no care to. I'm sure, talking to Dean, eventually we'll have to cover the Saw franchise.
We're doing Saw.
Yeah.
Another series just bloated, like the 10th's coming out. I gotta say, I like what I've seen so far, but I'm missing a lot of those. I don't know if it'll make any, I guess it only takes place in between 1 and 2, but yeah, I kind of agree with you there, Alex. There's a lot of, when they're out of James Wan's hands, they seem to lean more into like just the torture porn aspect of them. I don't feel like Hostel.
The Hostel doesn't work for me. That's just not my jam.
Fair enough. Here, like with Wolf Creek, I don't agree with Roger Ebert in this, but I have to give the man credit. Like, whereas Mick Taylor is pretty much made up for the sake of the movie, there is no Mick Taylor that anybody knows of, and we only have Chris's sort of inconsistent testimony to really develop any sort of narrative as to what may have actually happened to the real life Liz and Christy. So I kind of get where he's coming from there, where we don't really know that this is how things really went down. So let's just take what may have happened to these two women and make a character like a sadistic crazed killer and make them torture them. But that being said, I feel like most of like the violence against women conversation comes in with this movie is like through the implications, because we don't really see, again, who is it that's who's tied up to the pole? Is that Liz? We don't see her. That's Chrissy. Okay, so we don't see him, like, he's messing with her, but we didn't see what happened to her before. And she ends up kind of getting put down fairly easily, if you will. I know it's not easy, but she's not ended up tortured. And we don't see Liz being tortured. Like, it's implied for sure. There's implications from what happened before when she was tied up and what's going to happen later after her spinal column is severed. But that being said, like, I feel like if the director really wanted to be mean-spirited and go crazy and show and revel in violence against women, he had every opportunity to do so. I feel like we see them struggle and fight back and definitely, receive some lashes, but by no means did I feel like it was really the director showing off and trying to, praise or in any sort of way glorify violence against women. But I can't help but say, like, Roger's got a bit of an argument there, because for the most part, that stuff is, not grounded in reality and as strongly as we say it can be. So
I
There's
think
something to be said.
Right. I think this movie would have benefited in that aspect if they could have kept the part where they said 30,000 people go missing in Australia every year. Okay.
Mhm.
I had to stop the movie right then. And I'm like, that seems ridiculous. That seems so high. We looked it up and it's at like 38,000 people now go missing every year.
Oh
in
my
Australia.
god!
Oh, wow.
They don't go there.
Jesus.
Why do you go there?
Right.
Why go there?
I know many are found, but like what
Right.
is it? It was like 10% are never seen again or something.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
3,000 people.
Leave it at that. Don't say this is based on true
Yeah.
events or whatever. Okay. If
There
you
you
leave that
go.
part out, you avoid all of that controversy.
Yeah, I feel like a
True.
lot of horror movies during this time and maybe a little bit after this played on that whole like based on the true story,
Yeah.
based
Oh.
on actual events,
Totally.
kind of thing. Like The Strangers did that, and I was like, and that was like very loosely based on some stuff that the director or writer had heard,
Right.
and like and what you're kind of using that as like your hook. I mean, I get it because it works for some people because they're like
It puts
they look
asses
it
in
up.
seats.
Yeah.
There's-
I don't think. There's the thing with Roger Ebert though. I guess like it's just I would like to know the difference between like why this gets 0 stars, but then something like The Last House on the Left, he gave 3.5 stars
Right.
to,
Right.
which is just as violent. He didn't like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake for the same reasons that he thought it was too violent and bleak and all as well. And I guess I just don't see the difference.
on,
I guess
Raj.
and like
Yeah,
the
I agree.
the
Well,
approach.
Like I said earlier, when we were talking about like how we rank the movies and the franchises, what we ate that day, the placement on the set, all those. It really,
Right.
I think all of us, when you look at our track record, we can be inconsistent with our ratings or with our reviews.
Who
So-
can be, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So that, whatever. But there's a bit, you had said that like it brings people in, but there's a bit from Bo Burnham's stand-up where he
Love Bo Burnham.
does this riff on comedians who always say this is a true story. This is a true story. Listen to this, and then they go on and tell the story. He's like, who gives a fuck? It doesn't matter. All right,
Right.
Your joke doesn't matter if it's true or not. All right,
The
just
audience
tell the
doesn't
joke.
know one way or another.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
cares? Yeah. By saying that, because they the more after he said that, I would watch more stand-up, and so many of the comedians go, all right, now this is a true story. This really happened. Who cares? It doesn't matter. We don't
Exactly.
need
It doesn't
that.
You
matter
do
at all.
not need to say that
Yeah.
at all. Yeah.
No. Watching this movie, you'd be scared enough without having that true story. Just being like, oh, what if that what if I went to Australia and that happened? Putting the true story in there for me just has me saying like, well, that's probably not true, and that's probably
Right.
not true.
True.
And that's
Yeah.
why it's that based on it. So now I'm just trying to pick out where it's not true instead of totally getting immersed in, oh, what if this happened to me?
Yeah, Gaius, I think you're right. I think it's probably stems more of like a trend at the time for horror movies.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It was a huge hook back then, and like a lot of my friends that they would just try to look up like, oh, well, how true is it? Like, and you would find out eventually that it was just a kernel of a of a story
Right.
that they're like,
Yeah.
For sure.
Snippet.
Yeah.
they're like based on that one sentence I read, that's what this is based on, and now we're just gonna
Yeah.
run with it. And a lot of movies did that back then, and But I agree. I don't even think you need that hook for this. Like the
No.
situation alone is frightening.
Mhm.
I don't need to
Yeah.
know that this could have happened in real life because it already feels like it could. You could be in that kind of situation where without you letting me know that this
Right.
is loosely
Yeah.
based on some kind of true event.
Unless you're a documentary, I don't need to hear based on a true story. All right.
Right.
Exactly.
That's true.
Right.
That's very true.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Any kind of final thoughts that you have about the film? Like, and also we like to occasionally give out scores for these kind of things at the end.
Totally.
What are your kind of final thoughts on the movie? I'll start with you, Alex. You kind of
Yeah, so it was fun to revisit the movie. I'm actually glad that I watched it several hours ago. Okay, so I watched it this morning, and I had a
Nice.
whole day to sort of think about it, because if we would have recorded this 10 minutes after, I would have had a very negative outlook on this.
Yeah.
Just because you end the movie, you don't feel good after the movie ends.
Right.
All right, you don't feel cheery, and I think that's the intent of the movie. Okay, you're not supposed to feel good when this is over. That's the sort of movie that it is. But by giving a little bit of breathing room in there, I've been able to focus
Settle
on the things
down.
that I like. Yeah.
Yeah.
And realize what the intent was from the director and how that worked. This was a much better conversation taking place hours after than it would have been.
Right on.
I'm excited to. I think one day we will have to cover this franchise, probably when the third one comes out, because I was looking things up and it says that there is a third movie in production.
Development. Yeah.
Is the actor who's played Mick cast?
Probably. I mean, he's been
okay.
he was in this one, the sequel, and the web series.
John Jarrett, right? Is it John?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. Oh, I didn't know he was in the web series too. That maybe it's a little better than I was giving it credit for.
Yeah.
But cool.
Do you want me to give a rating now? What do you guys normally do the ratings?
Usually, sometimes we do it like out of 10, like whatever you would give out of 10.
Yeah, or however you normally rate it. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think this is, when looking at some of the other movies that the director did and talking about how I think like the Belko Experiment did this thing, but did it a little better. I would probably put this at like a 6 or so. Which it might sound bad, but 60%. But
hey, I say all the time, there's great 6s for sure.
Right? Yeah.
Oh,
I think this is a solid 6.
Yeah.
All right. What about you, Dean?
Yeah. So I did enjoy the movie quite a bit. I was pleasantly surprised with how it started. I really love when I can just like connect with the characters and really feel like they're friends, like they're part of the group. I was having a good time just hanging with them in the beginning of the movie. So I was not thinking it was slow. I was just like rolling with it, having a good time. And then when shit went down, I felt very affected by it. So I was screaming at the television, like I said, hands on my face. I just, and I like that. I like that feeling when I'm watching a movie. I didn't feel like, sometimes you can feel a little bit squeamish where it feels like it pushes it too far. I did not feel that in this movie. I just felt like really intense and into it. So I was a fan of this one. I was pleasantly surprised. Rating, Alex knows this. Ratings are tough for me.
Yeah. Dean loves everything though. This is what I love about Dean.
I love everything.
Dean loves everything. That's
nice.
So I find giving stuff like stars difficult, but I'm gonna do it here. I would say, I would say this is like a 7 out of 10. I very much enjoyed this movie. I'd very much watch it again. Not my favorite movie, not going to watch it every single year, every single October, but I would revisit this thing again. I would recommend it to some friends I have who I know would enjoy this type of thing. It really kind of reminded me at the beginning of like 28 Days Later. I just like kind of really felt like how it's slowly progressing through. It felt like a little bit bleak right away, maybe just how it's shot, but still the characters felt real, and it felt like I was still, I knew them. I felt like I knew those characters right away. So anyone who likes 28 Days Later, I would say like it's a good vibe. It's kind of a similar vibe to that.
Okay.
So yeah, I enjoyed this one. I'll go 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Actually, same in the aspect of I find it hard to rate films. I don't even necessarily know if what I put into my ratings, like what differentiates a 6 from an 8. Sometimes it's hard to really find the line, but I already had the number in my head too, and I'm gonna give this movie a solid 7. I think I liked it a little bit more than when I'd seen it earlier this year, and I had enjoyed that watch, but a rewatch always goes a little bit farther. That being said, time to put some time in between this one. I was gonna say if this was like more rewatchable, I would probably lean towards a 7.5 or an 8. But where I'm like, I could probably put some distance between this now, having seen it twice this year, and nothing's screaming at me to go see it again. Also, as messed up as it sounds, I like a higher body count. So like there's
Jackson is a fan of like give me all the guts and small intestines.
It could have been more violent for me, honestly.
Right,
But now it being a true story, like I'm grateful. I thought he did a fantastic job of what he did choose to show. So yeah, no, I completely agree. Just to wrap it up, a 7 out of 10 for this guy right here.
Yeah, I would give it 7 out of 10 as well. I mean, I get that it's very at times uncomfortable to watch, and you don't feel great after watching it. But
it's making you feel something, right?
If you're feeling something, and that is the intention, right? And even watching it today, I guess how everyone felt like it was kind of like, I want to say icky is the right word, but you don't feel great when it's over. But then you're like, you have to like go with that feeling. Is that feeling is not like this movie is bad. I mean, that's just what you just watched is pretty harrowing and a lot to take in. And this is not one of those kind of fun horror movies either. Like you don't get a sense of enjoyment watching this kind of tension and stuff play out. Where at some horror movies that it can be fun, but this isn't. at all. But what he was able to accomplish, I think, with how he kind of depicted all this stuff, I think that he did a good job of presenting tension and then making you feel like I said, giving you a couple of fleeting moments of hope, like, oh, maybe they might. Oh, wait, nope, they won't. And and then we didn't speak specifically about the individual actors, but I thought all three of them are only four. I mean, of course, Andreas Mick Taylor, but the three leads are very good as well because they're likable enough. You care about them. They're engaging. The girls in particular, once they need to show terror and all that stuff, when things get real, they're very, very good. You believe it. So yeah, I think it's a solid 7. It's not I don't think a rewatchable one. It's not
right.
Mick Taylor is no Freddy Krueger. It's not like watching A Nightmare on Elm Street where it's like, oh, this is just gonna be a fun watch. But I do think people, if they wanted to check it out, could make it part of their kind of spooky season watch. Especially if they are just discovering it too. It's a really solid entry to the genre, I think.
Well, I think what would be interesting is because I've never seen the second one, watching franchises like we do, I think there's a lot of potential for, especially seeing that this first one was successful and wanting to make more. There's a lot of potential to make Mick into that, into a slasher character that you would want to come back and see again. All that stuff is there. They would just have to, amp it up a little bit. So I am interested to watch the second one to see if they do that.
Yeah, me too, actually.
Yeah.
I've seen clips, I think, maybe way back in the day, but I can't think of anything concrete. But I would like, I'm a guy that I would show up for the Mick Taylor. It's hard to call him like a horror movie icon, but I think in the singular performance, he's up there with definitely underrated, slept on, if you will.
Yeah.
But I would like to see more of him in action because he's just an enthralling, charismatic sort of killer, although you're not in any way rooting for him like I would Michael Myers, for instance. I don't know if you guys are like on the side of the villain in movies like I normally am. Sure. He's hard to get behind, but I want to see more. Some more than others, certainly not Mick, but he is great to watch in action, I guess. But yeah.
It's interesting too because on IMDb, because you said you gave it a solid 6, Alex. It does have a 6.2 out of 10 on IMDb.
Yeah, they agree.
Also, one of the rare movies to get an F cinema score from opening day audiences when it came out. But you know what? I won't give any credit to that because Hereditary got a D+. And I still don't understand why. I mean, I guess, I do have friends that saw Hereditary. They were like, I didn't get it. I didn't like it. It certainly wasn't for me. But like I talk to Jax about this all the time. I always go back on that Hereditary D+. I'm like, what the hell were they watching?
Right. That seems that's messed up.
Well, okay. If they had the reaction that my wife had, I get it because she turned to me and she goes, "What did you just do to me?" Like we can't undo
want
this
that out of a horror movie though.
Right.
Like I can't.
Not my wife.
When it feels like the movie violated her. Wait, what did you let this do?
This has changed me and not for the better.
If something is able to impact you in that sort of way, think about the opposite end of that spectrum, where if you were like bored to tears walking out of a movie, like that's an F, but like, have that a reaction elicited from you from a movie, I'm like, how? That's an A at least. But
that movie's an A.
People have their reasons. I 100% agree. Not even as a horror movie, but as a movie in general.
Yep.
I'm going to assume this is going to F cinema score because I watched the trailer before we got on to do this. The trailer for it gives the impression that there's a lot more, probably less of that slow hour buildup, and more of like the last 30 plus minutes that we get. Yeah. And I can see casual moviegoers being like, "Well, that wasn't what I thought it was going to be."
The art of video or trailer making is one that has not been perfected.
Right. And horror movie trailers are really good at that, where it's like, oh, this looks a lot better. And then you see the trailer for White Noise is really good, but that movie is awful. But the trailer is amazing.
You know how many times
Man of Steel
trailer? And I hate that movie. But I wonder how this movie would do if it came out today, because we do have more of those A24 type movies. You have movies like Smile, that are the slow burn movies. They take a while, and we like that now. We've decided as a community, the horror movie people, that we're cool with that. So I wonder if that score would be different if the movie came out today.
I struggle to imagine this movie being made, and at least in the way that it is. I don't think if this story was adapted again, I would feel like just the culture we live in today, people would be in outrage that like these women and Ben too, but who suffered at the hands of this. Well, I know he's imaginary for the sake of the movie, but I feel like, just the culture would look at it as like exploitation of like a terrible event. I would struggle to think about it being made, but I feel like it's a movie that very much is a product of the 2000s where I love it where it came out, but I struggle to think how it would be received. I don't know if it would, if I think it would be different or not, but I'd like to see it though. It'd be cool.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. I do think if this comes out today, A24 releases it, because this got distributed by Dimension Films in the U.S. when it came out.
Yes, I noticed that. I was like, damn.
Which is really interesting. And I agree with Jackson. Even some of the reviews back then that seemed to take issue with the violence towards women in the movie, I think you would turn that up by 11 today with some people watching it and maybe looking at it in that regard, being like, oh, this is it. Like, I can see a lot more reviewers saying that this is a very nasty movie and not feeling too good about it. And I could be wrong, but I kind of think that could be.
That's how I see it going.
Probably.
Of it today.
That being said.
That being said, though, I still enjoy it. I think it works.
I want a Wolf Creek 3.
Give us Wolf Creek 3. Give us Wolf Creek 3.
Just make up the story.
Before we let you guys go, we predict the box office every time we do an episode of Back to the Blockbuster. This week I was pretty close with the Equalizer 3. I said 36 million. It grossed 34.5 million over 3 days and 42 plus over the 4-day weekend. I guess it's like the second biggest Labor Day weekend opening behind Shang-Chi. So way to go, Denzel Washington.
Very nice.
He's got it.
I saw it Thursday. It's fun. I mean, it is what it is. You know exactly what you're getting. It's super violent. There also was a little bit of joy watching him share the screen with Dakota Fanning again. That was very nice.
Nostalgic.
And they actually, they play off each other even well. Like her as a fully formed adult now, still like, how certain child actors, they seem like they might lose it when they get older. I feel like she's still able to maintain a high level. She's had a high level of talent from like a very young age where, even Denzel would say back then that, this girl, like she's 9, but she's clearly like 40. Her spirit's 40. But no, it was a fun movie and I'm glad it did well. I mean, the fact that there aren't any actors right now able to promote stuff and this movie still opened as well as it did is a testament of like, if it's good, people will go see it. And Denzel Washington, it's probably one of the few movie stars we have that can still open a movie based on his name alone.
For sure.
And this franchise has been remarkably consistent as far as like opening weekends. Like they're all in like the mid 30 range. So it's worked out. But this weekend we have The Nun 2. We mentioned the movie earlier. It's coming out this weekend. Tracking for it according to Deadline, it's a 30 million plus opening weekend, which would be down from what the first one opened to.
It's like 50, 55.
I believe it's 55. I'm putting that right. I believe it is $55 million. Which
strong.
Caught me off guard when it came out in 2018. Yeah, $53.8 million.
53. Okay.
By the time it exited theaters, it was 117 million. Or 117.4 million domestic, 365.5 million worldwide. It is the highest grossing film of the Conjuring universe, which is crazy to think as well. I didn't think it was that one. But what's promising is a lot of people. I'm seeing it tomorrow for work. A lot of people who have seen it early too said it's a lot better than they thought it was going to be. That it's a lot of them think it's better than the first one. There's less.
Let's hope so.
There's less focus on the lore and more focus on scares and stuff like that. So they were really excited for that. But based on like the tracking number and whatever interest you think might be in the movie and kind of what the first movie opened to, I'll go with you, Alex, first. Like, where do you think The Nun 2 will open at this weekend?
I've never met someone with like a positive reaction to The Nun, the first one. Shut up, Jackson.
Man, don't get me wrong. There is shit in that movie that does not work. It is way too reliant on jump scares. But overall, I'd say I like more than I disliked about it. I just had to throw that out there.
I can get it. It did have good atmosphere to it. The opening scene is pretty fun.
Yes, the character of Alec I really like.
Yeah.
I
think it's going to open up definitely lower than the first one, probably at like a 38 to 42, somewhere in there. Like, I think it's going to be better than what they're expecting, just because there are people who will show up because it's the Nun.
It's a horror. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So yeah, I would feel comfortable. I'm just gonna kind of go right in the middle. I'm gonna say 40.
Okay. There you go. What about you, Dean?
Yeah, that's this is an interesting one, and I think it can go different ways because the Nun. We covered the franchise of The Conjuring, so we had this shock of the Nun making so much money when we were going through it.
So it wasn't just me.
Oh, no, it wasn't just you.
Oh, it was me too. Trust me. And I thought the first would have blown everyone away, but
for sure, yeah. And in our franchise of episodes, The Nun is our most downloaded. So everybody saw The Nun. Everyone wants to hear about The Nun, even though we don't like it very much, and we have it at the bottom. It made a bunch of money opening weekend. People went to see it, and I think like it had a killer trailer. I remember the trailer, and the trailer was when I was still afraid of movies. And this was one of the trailers that I was like, I have to turn off the TV when it comes on because I'm scared of it. I'm scared of the trailer.
That was
weird
that is just
right? That's not a thing anymore at all for me. But it was a great trailer, and I think that brought a lot of people out. I'm not sure people even knew it was connected to the Conjuring universe, and I think they were just like, oh, this movie, The Nun, looks scary. So coming out with The Nun 2, I'm trying to balance like, are people really hungry for another Conjuring movie? Because like the last two didn't do super well when they opened. Like one was an Annabelle movie, opened at 20 something. Next one was Conjuring 3, but it kind of came out digitally around the same time. So also was around 20. So we're trying to balance like the 50 something that the original Nun made with the 20s that we've been making in the Conjuring universe. So I think it's going to be higher than the 20s. I think people are going to be, oh, The Nun 2. Like, I think I'm going to go see that. There's nothing really too much horror-y out there right now, so it fills a little bit of a void. If people are trying to get ready for spooky season, it might bring you out there. Maybe it's a little early, but I'm going to go a little bit lower than Alex here. I think I'm going to go at 35 is what this is going to open to.
Okay, I like the little diversity here. Get a little gap going. I mean, I agree with most of what you said. I think your predictions are solid. I'm in the middle of you guys, not in the middle, but in between at 39, because I feel like I'm hoping it'll do a little bit better than tracking, specifically, like you said, Dean, because it's kind of filling the gap of horror right now. We had the last voyage of the Demeter, which was pretty disappointing, and also not very a horror, but not a very felt like it came out a little bit too early for spooky season. I think this will be the movie to get audiences ready for Halloween until the Exorcist and whatnot. But the first one to get the ball rolling, so I have high hopes for it. Although it's under the first, but still above tracking. 39, final answer. And Gaius, how do you see the Nun 2 opening?
I'm gonna go with Alex. I think 40 is where I see it going. I think it will be better than tracking. Not as high as they. I still like when those numbers came out for the first week. I was like, who crunched those numbers? And they was like, I was like, did they? I don't not that I was mad. I mean, I love even when horror. Even if I enjoy the movie that much, I'm always excited when horror movies debut like that. I thought that was like a huge opening for something like that. And September has proven to be a pretty decent month. I mean, like it Chapter 2 opened in September, and that did really well during that month, and so did The Nun. I guess where it goes after opening weekend, it's going to be based on how much people enjoy it. And I also agree with Alex, where it's like I don't really hear a lot of people I know in my orbit that had positive things to say about the first one. You would never would have guessed that it made as much money as it did, the way that people negatively talk about it. But I still think like you said, people will go out and support horror movies no matter what. And it has a marketplace to itself until Saw opens at the end of September, Saw 10. So I I think it opens at 40. That and that'll be enough to even if it falls off a cliff next weekend, it'll make a lot of its money back and probably justify the existence of a third one if they want to do it. So,
Yeah.
So there you
I'm
go.
sure that universe is far from over, at least while they're making money.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for doing the predictions with us. When we do get the actual numbers, we will mention Alex what you predicted, Dean what you predicted as well.
Yep, I got them
on our next episode. And also, I mean, thank you for kind of kicking off our first episode of Spooky Season with us. Like I said, like you were the first podcast I messaged when this kind of came up. And I also we have a lot of stuff planned for the next couple of months, like whether we're going to be talking about specific movies or just a general horror discussion in general about the genre, and we're going to put that kind of schedule up for everyone to see. So this does not have to be a one-off. If you see something later that you're like, hey, I would love to jump in and talk about that, please let us know, because we would love to have you guys on again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would definitely be back. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I love this.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on. We're very grateful, very pumped. This was a really fun time for both of us.
Oh, good.
Nice.
Cool. Glad to hear, guys.
Tell everyone. I mean, I'm sure they can get your podcast wherever they can find podcasts. But if there's anything that anyone needs to know, you can let them know now. And of course, we'll link your podcast at the bottom of the description of this episode as well, so people can find you guys too.
Return, Revenge, Resurrection. You can get us anywhere. You had mentioned before that you love the artwork. That's actually Dean reached out to a guy, Matt Kaler. You can find him on his Instagram. Does awesome work. So go check out his stuff. You can find us on Instagram. Well, I say us because it sounds better, but you can find Dean over on Instagram running the page. I have nothing to do with that. All right, I'm terrible at that stuff.
Yeah, that's the same thing with Gaius. So
there's like someone's like, who am I talking with the most? And I was like, yeah, it's me. It's usually me.
Yep,
exactly.
So right now we're running through the Nightmare franchise. We just recorded the episode for Dream Warriors yesterday, so that was a lot of fun. But like other shows that we've covered, you can find us on Letterboxd. That's where we rank everything we've done. We've done Evil Dead, we've done Gremlins, we've done Slumber Party Massacre, Sleepaway Camp. So there's a lot of Black Christmas. There's a lot of fun ones to go back and listen to. We have a decent sized catalog right now if people want to jump in.
Nice,
fantastic.
Well, I'm excited that you guys joined us. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope when people listen to this, you have more people discovering your podcast, because this is what we want to do during these 2 months as well. On top of chatting it up with other horror nerds, we want to showcase other people who are doing this within this genre, and happy we got to start it with you guys. So
we appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
very much so. Well, I think that wraps up episode 119 of Back to the Blockbuster. Very special guests on today, Alex and Dean from Return, Revenge, Resurrection. Been a pleasure having you guys on. Thanks for kicking off spooky season with us, guys. Jeez, gotta find my words here. As you guys know, here at Back to the Blockbuster, you can find us anywhere you guys get your podcasts. Recently at Playlist, you guys, Apple users can find that in the iOS Apple Store. Be sure to check us out there. Check out the boys. Join us today on their Instagram as well, and I'm sure they'll be back. And happy spooky season, everybody. This has been episode 119. We'll catch you next week.
Peace.
Later, guys.